Have you ever found yourself seeking constant validation from a partner, your boyfriend or girlfriend? In that space of maybe catastrophizing any little moments of conflict, and just in this space of restlessness, of anxiety, in this place of maybe fear. No judgment. If you said yes to any of those, know that you are in the right place. I'm so excited to be going live today to be talking about how we can heal anxious attachment to really ease our anxiety. Because the truth is, so many of us struggle with anxiety. And another truth is, so many of us struggle with this anxious attachment style of love. About 25% of the general population has reported really experiencing anxious attachment. Although 25% of people struggle with anxious attachment, this does tend to be an attachment style more prevalent in women, affecting about 30% of us. Hi Lisa. Hi Crash 0 and 0. So nice to see you. I am really honored to be in this space to be talking to you about anxious attachment and how we can really heal anxious attachment styles to ease our overall anxiety. Because anxious attachment's got the word anxious in it, so you know it's going to be fueling our anxiety on so many different levels. So just so you know, this live, what I'm going to be talking about is really what is anxious attachment, how does it show up in our life, as well as 3 ways that anxious attachment actually fuels our anxiety. And by the end of it, I'm also going to share with you 3 ways that you can really start to heal and overcome your anxious attachment style. I'm so honored to be here with you talking about anxious attachment. I'll say that 5 times fast. But the truth is, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, 6 years ago, if I would be here talking about it, I would have laughed at you or probably gotten really aggressive and really defensive. The reason is I struggled with anxious attachment. You see, in 2014, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And one of the key characteristics of BPD is a distorted sense of self. So, again, my self worth was really on edge. And I had intense fears of abandonment. That intense fear of abandonment, combined with a distorted sense of self, fueled my anxious attachment. Every relationship that I was going into, I found myself in this place of restlessness, of insecurity. I was always seeking validation. Do you love me? Is this funny? Am I okay? What do you think? I was always violating boundaries of myself. I would promise myself that I would do these experiences to make sure that I was developing my internal sense of trust and capacity and confidence. But was I honoring those boundaries? Heck no. Anytime I got a partner who said, "Come with me, do this," I would drop everything to be with that person. And it really came to a standstill in my last relationship. My last relationship was extremely emotionally and physically abusive. It didn't start off like that, of course. It started off in the space of me being anxiously attached and really fueling my anxiety and finding a partner who was able to weaponize my anxiety and my anxious attachment styles. It got to the point in that relationship where I didn't know who I was anymore. I felt like I was made up of eggshells, where my eggshell exterior was tough enough to keep everything inside safe, but fragile enough to crack at anything. I didn't know who I was, and I honestly didn't really care, and it was really difficult for me to be in that space. And I remember one time laying on this theater floor that I was running with my partner, covered in beer and stale popcorn and lots of shame and guilt. And the door was open. And I had looked at that door so many times before in that relationship and wondered what would it be like to leave? What would it be like to really take my anxiety, my intense fear of abandonment, that hypervigilance and hyper awareness, and just walk away from it? If I left that theater, if I left that relationship and that pattern of love that I had grown up with, what would it be like outside? Would the air feel cool, crisp, and refreshing, or would it burn because I had been inside for so long, inside my anxious mind? Let me tell you, when I woke up in the morning, my life had changed because I, in that space of shame and guilt, had made a commitment to myself that when I woke up in the morning, I would have to do something. that I couldn't keep living my life in the space of hypervigilance, of fear of abandonment, and in the space of deeper and deeper physical and emotional trauma. So, day by day, week by week, I pulled myself up off that dirty theater floor and I got out of that relationship and I learned how to build my internal sense of self and really heal my anxious attachment style to break away from anxiety. And now I'm so happy to say that although I do have anxious tendencies, because healing is not linear, I'm really able to take those fears, that coping mechanism of anxiety, hear its wisdom, hear the messages within its mess, and really live a life of safety, stability, and most importantly, fulfillment. So, just a little overview of me, Des, the embodiment coach and somatic practitioner. And so, what I want to dive into now is really talking about anxious attachment. You know, what is anxious attachment? And so, anxious attachment is really going to be something, this characteristic, that this template that so many of us have, that we hold on to, that we follow in regards to creating those templates of love and creating those templates of safety. It can be really difficult sometimes to feel like we are in that space of safety when we're anxiously attached. And some of the kind of precursors or the foundation for anxious attachment to be built on is trust issues. If you grew up in an environment or in a childhood where your emotional safety wasn't met, your emotional needs weren't met, or you had constant levels of betrayal or trust, then that lack of trust, that lack of safety and security is going to fuel your anxious attachment. And it's really going to be the foundation for you as well. Knowing that your needs aren't likely going to be able to be met based off of these templates that you had in childhood, that you can't really trust what is going on because of these templates that you had in childhood. Those trusts, that shaky trust that you have, those trust issues are really also going to end up getting a best friend. And who is that best friend that those issues, those trust issues have? Self-worth. Really a distorted sense of self-worth. And so when we are having a difficult time trusting the people around us, which is why oftentimes we seek external validation. Do you love me? Is this okay? What do you think? How do you feel about me? Are you sure? Do you mean it? We're really going to be fueling those trust issues, is going to be fueling that lack of self-worth, because we don't trust inherently that we are worthy. That we are worthy of love, that we are worthy of safe love, that we are worthy of these experiences. Thank you, Lisa, so much for that comment. I'm really honored again to be coming and sharing with you, talking about these trust issues and how they can fuel our self-worth, our distorted sense of self-worth. Because again, let me tell you, it's been a journey for good old D-Bone over here. But another thing that those trust issues and those self-worth, you know, again, those best friends that really are more like nemesis to ourselves, what they end up doing is really fueling our desire, our need for external validation. Constantly in that space of asking people, can you tell me, giving me that support. You know, maybe you've got a friend who's anxiously attached, because again, anxious attachment doesn't have to just be with intimate partners. It could be with a friend, a family member. It might show up as someone constantly texting you and wanting to get that immediate response, asking you for constant support, approval. Hey, are you still here? Are we still friends? Is everything okay? Take a breath if you are that person who is experiencing it, and no judgment. Again, many of us do. 30% of women struggle with anxious attachment styles. But again, so those are just three kind of foundational things, three ways that anxious attachment can show up in your life. Having trust issues, having a low sense of self-worth, and really seeking external validation to create that sense of safety within yourself and within your relationship and your dynamics. No judgment. So I told you, again, that I would talk a little bit about anxious attachment. So now we are moving into part 2 of this live series. So what I'm going to be talking about now is how our anxious attachment can really fuel our anxiety. In part 3, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 different techniques or strategies that you can use to really start to overcome and heal your anxious attachment. So, how does anxious attachment fuel our anxiety? So many different ways. But what I want to do is I want to talk to you about 3 ways. And the reason that I really want to make this strong connection between anxious attachment and anxiety is because sometimes I think that we're separate. Sometimes I think that we might go into the space of, yeah, I get a little anxiously attached, or I have this fear of abandonment with my friends, family, partners, with my colleagues, whatever it is, this fear of not being included. And we don't think about how it can really impact our overall mental health, our overall emotional well being. And so, what I want to share with you is that people, women, men, it doesn't matter, who struggle with anxious attachment are more likely to experience high anxiety, depression. And so, just knowing that this thought process that we have is interconnected to our overall anxious levels, and again to the susceptibility that we might be experiencing depression. Take a breath into that. Talking about the A word, anxiety, can put us in that space of tension and trauma, but just know that you're safe. You're choosing to listen to this live because you have choice and you're an empowered person. I can tell. Especially you, Lisa, I see you. And so 3 ways that anxious attachment are really going to fuel our anxiety are: 1, that fear of abandonment. If we are in this constant fear of worry, is this person going to leave me? Again, friend, partner, family member, colleague, whatever. Is this person going to leave me? We're going to be in that constant state of survival. We're going to be in that space of, is this everything okay? Am I safe? Am I being seen? Am I being accepted? And we're going to be in that space of looking for constant reassurance. Okay, I'm so worried about being abandoned. I'm in this constant state of worry that now I need to be reassured. Can I get that space of validation? When we are constantly worried, our body slowly starts to tense up. We get a little bit tighter and tighter and tighter because, again, we're in that space of survival. So fear of abandonment fuels our anxiety because that fear of abandonment puts us in a mindset of constant worry, of really always in that space of reassurance, wanting to create sense of safety by control. And it's also going to really make us hypersensitive to any potential threat. If you have ever had someone that maybe sends you a little message and then you internalize that and you go in your head, the downward spiral of ruminating thought patterns, of racing thoughts, of constantly being on the edge, then you might resonate and relate to this. Again, take a breath. That constant state of worry is going to fuel our anxiety because anxiety in the body is not knowing how to cope with something. Anxiety in the body is fear of failure. Am I going to make the right decision or am I going to make the wrong decision? That level of fear put under the pressure of anxious attachment, what do you think it's going to do to your anxiety? Let me know in the comments. You think it's going to make it more anxious or you think it's going to make it cool as a cucumber? Let me know what you think. The truth is that pressure, that fear of abandonment, that state of constant worry, that fear of making the wrong decision, it's going to fuel our anxiety. Bonus points if you get the answer right. And the second way that anxious attachment is going to fuel our anxiety is it's going to put us in that space of hyper awareness. If we are being hypersensitive to any threat, that hypersensitivity, that constant state of worry, it's going to put us in a hyper awareness space where we are analyzing every little thing that could be happening, every little thing that is happening. We might even go into that space of fortune teller, anticipating all of the what ifs. Well, if they said this, then what if they meant that? What if they meant this? What if they're feeling this? Take a breath if any of that resonates. And just so you know, I'm talking about anxious attachment really with the point of connecting it to anxiety because on Wednesday, I'm going to be starting a 3-day challenge to mental clarity. And it's specifically for women who are struggling with anxiety. So if you are watching this live and you're like, oh gosh, Des, this is good, please join me for my 3-day challenge. There's a link in the bio as well as in the comments. And so one of the things that's really fueling our anxiety is going to be that hyper awareness, that hyper vigilance, over analyzing all of the behaviors of the people around us because we are honestly looking for signs of rejection. Say that again. That hyper awareness, hyper vigilance, hypersensitivity that we have in the space of anxious attachment is going to fuel us looking for signs of rejection. So again, just to recap, the two ways that anxious attachment are really going to ease our anxiety or fuel our anxiety in this specific case is our fear of abandonment in that space of constant worry, and in that space of hypervigilance, always overanalyzing the things that are being done and said around us. Hi, Ryan. Nice to see you. The third way that anxious attachment is going to fuel our anxiety is we go into that state of catastrophizing. Again, if anxious attachment is really this idea of fear of abandonment with individuals, worrying about this deep-seated fear of being left behind, of being abandoned or rejected, that is going to put us in that space of hypervigilance, overanalyzing everything that's going on with our friends, with the people around us, with their messages. And that is also going to then, the next step, put us in this catastrophizing space of thinking. Anxious attachment is really going to have us in that space of looking at every situation and imagining the worst case scenario. This can show up as maybe you get into an argument or a conversation with your friend, with your partner, with a family member. And maybe it's just something minor. It could be something like, hey, Des, do you mind if you put your coffee on the coffee coaster on the coffee table, so that way it doesn't get a stain? Me in that space of anxious attachment, which I was there a few years ago, I would have said, oh my goodness, let me go into catastrophizing. This person thinks that I'm irresponsible. This person thinks that, because I can't take care of the table, that they probably don't want to take care of me. They might end up breaking up with me. Maybe this is just the precursor, the firework to them leaving. All of this catastrophizing thinking is going to fuel our anxiety because these minor situations, experiences that we are going through end up getting catastrophized, blown into these larger than life, larger than reality experiences that we end up internalizing and living as if they were true. And we live them as though they were true because it's just our coping mechanism. Okay, I want to go in and catastrophize and prepare for this because I'm so overwhelmed and anxious at the idea of this happening that I want to prepare for the worst case scenario. Take a breath if that resonates. So that was part 2. Again, just 3 ways that anxious attachment are really going to fuel our anxious thoughts and our anxiety. Now moving on to part 3. And again, this part is really where I'm going to share with you 3 different ways, 3 techniques that you can 3 things you can do to start to ease your anxious attachment and really step out of that anxious thought process, that anxiety mind. And again, if you want any more support around this, please join me for my 3-day challenge. It's for women with anxiety, Calm the Chaos. It's a 3-day challenge to mental clarity, where our first day, we're really going to be restoring emotional resilience and getting you to understand your triggers. Our second day is really focused on how to silence your inner critic so you can have more energy, clarity, and time. And our third day is really how to cultivate a sense of calm so you can really stay grounded and trust yourself no matter what challenges or adventure life throws at you. Again, there's a link in my bio and in the comments. And so the first way that I want to share with you on really how to start to heal your anxious attachment style is making sure that you are engaging in self-care practices. Now, when I talk about self-care, I'm not like grab yourself a bottle of wine and some sour candy and watch a bunch of Netflix. What I'm talking about is really nurturing you. Really getting to that place where you are nurturing yourself, your values, your interests, and your hobbies, which might mean taking a break from Netflix, taking a break from wine. Sour candies, it's debatable. And so what can you do to really start to develop your internal sense of self, especially knowing that anxious attachment is really created in the space of having trust issues and not really having a strong sense of self-worth. If you can build your self-worth by really nurturing your own values and interests and creating a stronger identity for yourself, you're really going to start to challenge that anxious attachment thought process that you have. The stronger that you are, the more that you trust yourself, the stronger you are in your identity, guess what? Not only is your anxious attachment going to get washed away, but your anxiety is really going to start to diminish as a result of it as well. It's really going to start to slow down. Because again, anxiety in the body is not knowing how to cope with something. It shows up as this coping mechanism because we're afraid of failure. We're afraid that we can't trust what would happen if we made the wrong decision. I can't trust what would happen if I make the wrong decision, so I really got to focus and make the right one. This pressure. Building your sense of self can be such a powerful thing. So take a moment and just think right now, what's one thing you can do this week for you? What is one thing this week that you can do for you that would get you into a deeper sense of who you are, strengthening your identity and your values and your interest? Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's writing a love letter to yourself. Maybe it's just writing to yourself in general. I always suggest writing because it slows down the nervous system and it slows down the racing anxious mind, because the anxious mind is fast. So really being able to slow it down can be so powerful. Plus, looking at the words that you're reading can be so powerful as well, because it gets internalized and kind of interpreted in the brain in a different way. Maybe it's something like, oh, I really like playing the guitar or the ukulele or whatever, this instrument, the harmonica. Let me spend a couple of minutes, 5 minutes, to really just practice going for a walk, reading a book, really finding something that you can do and scheduling it in, which is a perfect segue into number 2. Because the first thing that you can do to really heal your anxious attachment and as a result heal your anxiety is to, again, make sure that you are nurturing your interest, strengthening your identity, practicing self-care, honest self-care. And the second thing that you can do is start creating boundaries, not just with other people. The key one I really want you to focus on is creating boundaries with yourself, which is so difficult. I remember creating boundaries with myself was such a difficult thing for me in that space of anxious attachment, because I wanted to be there with my friends, with my family, with my loved ones. Oh my goodness, if they ask me to go out, I can't say no. If I say no, then what's going to happen? I don't trust that they're going to be there. I don't trust that something's going to happen. I don't trust. But really being able to create those boundaries for yourself, if you set aside an hour on Friday for you to practice the guitar, to go journal and walk outside, to give yourself a massage, to dance, to learn a new skill or trade, to do inner child work, whatever it is, if you set aside that time, honor it. No matter what comes up, honor it the same way that you would honor that if it were a date with your partner, if it were a date or a session with your coach or therapist. Give it that same level of strength and worthiness, because you are worthy. You always have been. I promise. You are worthy. You are worthy of that hour. And I know that if something or some opportunity comes up to challenge that, where you want to break that boundary with yourself, where you want to break that commitment with yourself, prepare for it. This is a bonus little tip. Prepare for it. You know, what can you do to make sure that you can honor your boundaries? Is it writing letters to yourself for motivation? Is it getting an accountability buddy? Asking someone, hey, I've set aside a time, an hour for myself on Friday, and if you could really hold me accountable to that, it would really mean a lot. If I kind of want to bail, can I text you and say, hey, I don't want to do this, and can you give me some motivational messages? Anticipate. Because in that space of anticipation, you're also building that muscle of inner trust, and you're helping the mind cope with that possibility as well. So just to recap, the 3 ways to really start healing your anxious attachment, or the 2 ways to really start healing your anxious attachment, are 1, self-care. And what I mean by that is nurturing your identity, your values, and your interests, and scheduling them. Because awareness is a beautiful thing, but awareness without action is going to leave you feeling stuck, and it's going to fuel the shiitake out of your anxiety. So making sure that you schedule it. And the second thing, creating and maintaining boundaries within yourself. So if you are scheduling those boundaries, scheduling that stuff, honor that commitment. What boundaries do you need to have in place to honor your commitment? And some bonus tips that I shared making sure that you maybe have an accountability buddy that you can share this with, or writing a letter to yourself for that internal sense of support. And the third thing that I want to share with you, take action. Please. Taking action can be such a difficult thing when we are in a space of anxiety, because anxiety is moving really, really fast. It's going back and forth. It is feeling paralyzed. If you've ever felt paralyzed by anxiety or decision paralysis, drop a yes in the comments. Sometimes we feel such decision paralysis with anxiety that we feel like we can't make a decision, but you can. Really taking action is not only going to be such a powerful thing to blast through your anxiety, but taking action is the fastest way to cut through anxiety and fear. So the third thing is taking action. What action do you need to take to really start to feel safe in your sense of self, to really start stepping away from anxious attachment, and to really start cultivating a healthier mindset, a healthier emotional and overall well-being? What do you need? What action do you need to break away from anxiety? This is something that you can journal on just to see what comes up for you. Because again, what comes up for you is going to be different from me. It's going to be different from Lisa, from Ryan. And for those of you, again, who are looking for some supportive action to take, please join me for my 3-day challenge, June 7th to June 9th. Calm the chaos. We're going to be diving into so many different practices to make sure that you have action items that you can take. Because I am tired of women feeling stuck and resentful and fueled by anxiety. So I'm going to give you some action items. They're going to be gentle yet powerful. Our first day is focused on restoring emotional resilience and having you understand your triggers so you can appropriately really respond to all the things that you're feeling, whether it is anxious attachment, whether it is betrayal, whether it is just the overstimulation of the world that we live in. I've got your back. Day 2, we're really going to be focused on how you can silence your inner critic so you can really start to drop out of the analytical mind and back into your innate wisdom. Thank you, Bijal. It's so nice to see you. You're amazing. So silencing your inner critic so you can drop out of the analytical mind, back into the experience and into your sense of self for more clarity, energy, and confidence. Bonus, you'll also probably get a lot of extra time, because how much time do you spend in a space of anxiety? No judgment, no judgment. Day 3, we're really focused on how can we cultivate a sense of calm, because really making sure that we've got powerful and easy grounding practices that we can step into, that we can fall back into, is going to be such a powerful thing. Because again, when our mind runs rampant with anxiety, it can be difficult to focus on anything. So having some easy grounding techniques that you can use to cultivate an internal sense of calm is really going to be so powerful in easing your anxiety. So you can really start to calm the chaos that whirls around in the mind as a result of it. I'm Des Caminos, and I'm an embodiment coach. I'm so honored to be sharing these resources with you, and I hope to see you at my 3-day challenge. There's a link in the bio and in the comments. If you've got any questions, know that I'm here. And if you know of a woman who's struggling with anxiety, please share this event with her. We are all in this together. Anxiety can make us feel so isolated and so alone. But you are not alone. I promise. I'm here for you always. See you June 7th. Awkward time where I get off live. Bye, Instagram. And awkward time where I get off live. Bye, Facebook.